Just hours ago, Joe Biden delivered a speech that marks a clear turning point in his administration. It's a declaration of war against nearly 80 million Americans. And it's a promise from Joe Biden that he'll ignore the Constitution and basic principles of federalism just to get what he wants. This afternoon, Joe Biden announced that most businesses in this country are required to start forcing employees to either get the COVID vaccine or submit to regular COVID tests.
My job as president is to protect all Americans. So tonight, I'm announcing that the Department of Labor is developing an emergency rule to require all employers with 100 or more employees that together employ over 80 million workers to ensure their workforces are fully vaccinated or show a negative test at least once a week.
Joe Biden added that if state governors don't go along with this, he'll, quote, use my power as president to get them out of the way. What power does the president have to override state governments on this issue exactly? Joe Biden didn't say. Maybe it's the same authority that allowed the CDC to suspend all evictions in the country. This administration no longer cares about the rules. They'll do whatever they want. Keep in mind, less than a year ago, Joe Biden told us that vaccines would never be mandatory. He knew he didn't have the authority to do this.
No, I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand to be mandatory.
Now Joe Biden's threatening the unvaccinated more than he's threatening the Taliban. It's the same exact story that we saw with the CDC's eviction moratorium. First, Joe Biden said he wouldn't do it. Then he did it anyway. So there's no legal justification at all. But listen carefully to Joe Biden's scientific justification. Tonight, Joe Biden appeared to admit that the COVID vaccines aren't very effective.
We're going to protect vaccinated workers from unvaccinated coworkers. We're going to reduce the spread of COVID-19 share of the workforce that is vaccinated in businesses all across America.
Wait a minute. If the vaccines work, why do the vaccinated need protection from the unvaccinated? Again, Joe Biden didn't say. He also didn't explain why vaccinated travelers still need to wear masks on airplanes. Instead, tonight, Joe Biden announced steeper fines for travelers who don't obey.
The Transportation Safety Administration, the TSA, will double the fines on travelers that refuse to mask. If you break the rules, be prepared to pay.
The irony is that today, while Joe Biden was announcing these mandates, Kamala Harris spoke out against, quote, government interference in what she called personal well-being decisions. Now Republicans are responding. Republican Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel has just announced that the Republican National Committee will sue the Biden administration over this order. Quote, when his decree goes into effect, the RNC will sue the administration to protect Americans and their liberties, unquote. Matt Walsh is host of the Matt Walsh Show. He joins us to respond. Well, Matt, this looked like a temper tantrum over Afghanistan, the president just taking out his anger on the country, on businesses. How do you see it?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting that we were assured for 4 years that Donald Trump is a tyrant, that he is, Hitler incarnate. And meanwhile, he was like the least tyrannical president we've had in a very long time with his, with the way that he used his authority. No, we had to elect this rotting bag of oatmeal to get a real tyrant. I mean, that's what Joe Biden, as you point out, this is not the first time that he has explicitly said he doesn't have the authority to do something legally and then done it anyway. So we could sit here till we're blue in the face and say he doesn't have the authority to do it. He doesn't have the authority to do it. Doesn't matter. He admits he doesn't have the authority to do it, but he's going to do it anyway. And I think all of us as Americans, we have to understand this, that is, as far as they're concerned, the powers that be, the legal justification is that they want to do it, and what are you going to do about it? That's really their justification, which is why maybe this, in the end, is a good thing in the sense that it's a time for choosing for Americans and American business owners and American citizens. Are we going to comply and lie down to this, or are we finally going to stand up and say, you know what, it's not going to happen? You want to send, you want to send the army in and shut down millions of businesses and start arresting business owners, because that's what you're going to have to do. I think we have to draw that line. If we don't draw it here as Americans, then then we may as well forget about this country and forget about freedom entirely.
Well, Biden's going to run out of federal employees to enforce these mandates, because if 500,000 federal employees aren't going to get vaxxed, they're going to get fired. So he's just going to run out of little boots on the ground to visit these businesses and hand them slips and fine them. My assessment is that no one's going to trust Joe Biden anymore. After he declared independence from the pandemic in July, after he said there weren't going to be mask mandates, after he said no vax mandates, he took off his mask in this big show. And now he throws down the gauntlet and we go back to this permanent pandemic. Same thing with Afghanistan. Taliban wasn't going to take over. We got this under control. Next thing you know, Kabul's falling and Americans are stranded. No one believes him anymore.
No one believes him or trusts what he has to say for a lot of good reasons. You know, number one, he doesn't even know what he's saying half the time, and that's pretty clear. But I also think the other part of this is that no one is going to trust the vaccines. There was already a problem of especially from the perspective of the federal government and the people that are pushing the vaccines. There's a problem. People don't trust them. Well, you're not going to convince people to trust the vaccines when you go about it this way. And if you're worried about, quote unquote, conspiracy theories and all this kind of stuff, well, having the federal government tear the Constitution up to force these substances into your arms, that is not going to quell those conspiracy theories. And as you pointed out, if the vaccines work, as many of us have pointed out, do the vaccines work or not? Because if they do, then it shouldn't matter to you if you're a vaccinated person whether or not your coworker has the vaccine. That's the question they cannot answer. The other question they can't answer, by the way, is what about natural immunity? Does that not exist? We're just pretending that natural immunity doesn't exist. In his order that he passed down today, natural immunity doesn't factor in. We're just pretending that that's not a thing. Well, the science tells us that it is a thing and that it provides lasting protection. But we're throwing that on the burn pile, I guess.
Well, as you said, Matt, if you've been vaxxed, nothing to be afraid of for the unvaxxed. Doesn't make any sense. He's taking a sledgehammer to vaccine confidence. Matt Walsh, thanks so much.
Thank you.